Alright, now we're back in business. I'm going to put the thermostat back in because, as you can see, there is a rubber seal that seals against it, and that seal is what seals this up. With the absence of a thermostat, that's why it was leaking, which resulted into an over-torqued bolt and an extraction. So this is going to be right quick and easy to fix. As long as we haven't blown a head gasket, we're good to go. Alright, torque the bolts down just enough. Squeeze that little rubber gasket. Don't want to tighten them so much they twist off. So take nothing more than hand tight, about a quarter turn. And that'll do it right there. And there she is. Let's add some coolant. Now this coolant I'm going to have to top off with some water here. I'm going to add about half of this coolant. Now I'm going to run over to the Marathe and top the rest of it off with water, so we have our proper mix. We don't want straight ethylene glycol because water itself is what gives the cooling of the engine. The green ethylene glycol just keeps the water from boiling at 212 degrees and keeps it from freezing at 32 degrees. With this system under pressure, normal straight water will work in most situations. Unless it's like really hot out in the desert. But yeah, we're gonna have to add some water to this here. Subaru cooling system will take almost 2 gallons. The radiator itself will hold a good gallon. The motor will hold about 1.5 gallons. So we're probably gonna have to have another 1.5 gallons of fluid here. Another thing that's important, we'll want to add to the coolant reservoir. That way, if the car overflows, it'll flow back into here. Or if the engine uses any coolant, it'll suck it out of here and give it a while. And you can check the level on this to keep an eye on it. Now we want to have this thing filled up as much as we can before we attempt to start the car. And then as the car runs, we'll want to add it as it runs to ensure complete circulation throughout the engine system and to burp out any air bubbles. Alright, now I've just added some water to this thing. As you can see, it appears to be full, but by far means it is not. Once I start this up and it begins to reach operating temperature, this radiator is going to go down and it's going to take another 1.5 gallons to fill it up. If I were to think it was full now and fill it up, or drive it now thinking it was full, I'll have problems 10 miles down the road and be in the same situation we're in right now. Coolant, the water will go down. You want to make sure to have all the air bubbles out of the system. There's no signs of oil in here, so that's telling me I don't have any oil in the water that would pertain to a blown head gasket. The oil looks clean as well. I don't see any signs of milkshake. Milkshake is a slang term for water in the oil. Looks like a milkshake. Another thing we do is when we add coolant, keep an eye on the temperature gauge, because if there's no water passing over the gauge, it will not read accordingly. So we want the gauge to rise to operating temperature and maintain somewhere in the middle. As you can see, there's still more air coming out. Now, we gotta wait for the thermostat to open. Squeezing the hose will sometimes help work the fluid into the motor. We want it to circulate in the motor, because that's where it needs to be. It only needs to come to the radiator if it's too hot for the motor, and that's what the thermostat does. Alright, now I've started the car just a few minutes ago. Temperature gauge hasn't had time to do anything. So what we want to do is let it rise a little bit and keep an eye on it. I'll hold the throttle open just slightly to help it out. There we go. Now that she's reached operating temperature thresholds, the thermostat should have opened by now, and our coolant level will have dropped considerably, thus needing to add more. Now that she's filled up, go ahead and top this off. If it needs any more, they'll take out of this right here. Now, I want this thing to get warm enough for the fans to come on. Once the fans come on, that'll tell me that everything is flowing, that enough hot water is flowing from the motor through the radiator to kick the fans themselves on. When the fans are on, we know our cooling system is working properly. I'll double check the cooling system, take her for a spin, and keep an eye on the temperature gauge. After I'm driving it, I'll shut her down, let her cool, and check the coolant once again. One way to tell if the thermostat is open is to feel the radiator itself or the upper radiator hose to feel if it's warm. If it's warm, like the rest of the engine, we know our thermostat is open, and we should be able to see some sort of circulation down here. Right now the thermostat is not open. So if we think we're full now, you know, we can still get hot down the road. So I want this thing to open up. As soon as she opens up, these fans will kick on, and then I'll check the coolant once again. Now I do have a slight amount of steam. Steam would be an indication we have a leak in the cooling system, but I'm going to dismiss that at this moment because I have spilled some towards the front of the radiator and the car is warmed up enough to evaporate it. So what I'll do is when everything's full, I'll wait for everything to dry, and then I'll look for steam later. Oh yeah, she's nice and toasty now. If I pull a rev, we'll get some more air bubbles out of here. These electric fans should kick on at any moment. Yeah, adding coolant to dry motor can be a little tricky because all these air bubbles, if you thought it was full before, each one of those air bubbles is where there's not water up in here. I don't know if you can see, but got a little bit of some circulation in there. It's kind of hard to tell through the camera, but I can see it with my own eye. Alright, now we have some circulation. If I pull a good rev on here, you'll see some swirling around in there. Yeah, just like a toilet. But anyway, this is what caused the problem. Danny Duke went to check his fluids, and he forgot to install the radiator cap. Went down the road. You know, as you go down the road, the motor revs up, and there went all his coolant. And from being low and trying to top it off, and not having it bled out completely, it thus caused the car to continue to get hot, which it got so hot that Danny Duke left it off the side of the road. You probably hear the carbola. Someone suggested to change the thermostat, but whoever suggested to change the thermostat did not know that this problem was caused from a loose radiator cap to begin with. And for Danny Duke's not too much knowledge about cars, went ahead and took the man's advice to remove the thermostat, which thus, upon reinstallation of the thermostat housing, twisted off a bolt. Now the thermostat has a rubber seal around it. That's what seals everything. Without the thermostat, and there's no gasket on the housing itself. So I went ahead and put the thermostat back in because that's what needs to be there. Goddamn train. Alright, the electric fans just kicked on. They'll kick off and on according to how warm the engine is. And she's also idled down an RPM or two, which tells me that the temperature sensor for the ECU is now sensing the car is at operating temperature. Alright, our temperature is holding steady. I'm going to take this thing for a cruise, and temperature should not get any higher than the little thermometer symbol there under normal operating conditions.